Well, it could have been worse. I mean, there could have been another car come the other way and him pull a yammy noob. Do 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 do. If you're mad I'm not using the actual music, it's because my videos keep getting copyright struck, so blame those assholes. Welcome to Squid Tips. I'm Alex, and I am back with another accident analysis, which is apparently the only thing I make that people seem to like.
This guy does these videos. His YouTube channel is called SquidTips. So basically what he does is he kind of does a failure analysis on crashes. And it's very good, you know, I do love his channel.
Not that I'm angry, I'm a little angry. Today I've got an anonymous submission, aka an unlisted video that I made a valiant attempt to get permission for, which isn't a thing I've ever even attempted to do with my previous videos. So if this is your video and you see this later and you're mad, I fucking tried. The reason I was so excited to use this clip was that it emphasizes some lessons about road conditions, traction, and decision making around less common passing situations that most riders don't learn until they slam headfirst into something. And as we'll talk about later in this video, this type of situation, mistakes don't usually give you an opportunity to put the lessons to practice. If you know what I mean, they die. I really should not joke about that, but I was not raised well, so this is kind of what you get. All right, I'm gonna shut up. Let's go. In today's analysis, we're in a quiet back roads between Thompsonville, a town of 3,400 people, and Lawrence, a town of 540 people, in good old Pennsylvania. Pretty sure I just nailed that pronunciation. At the beginning of this ride, the roads are mostly dry, but we can see that the rain is beginning to fall. I don't know if they still talk about this in the MSF courses, but there is still, of course, that old chestnut everybody should know, which is that the first 10 minutes or so after it starts raining, there's reduced road traction. That's because the rain begins to extract the oils that have begun building up on the road, but it hasn't quite washed them away, which amplifies the already reduced traction we get from having wet pavement. You don't need to do anything dramatic like literally sit and park your bike, just keep a little more upright, avoid sudden stops, rapid acceleration, normal rain riding stuff. The rider finds themselves following traffic that is driving very cautiously, even going slower than the speed limit, which might be why this rider seems a little bit frustrated. They follow this traffic for a few minutes until they finally get out of the populated part of the area. Notice here that the road lanes are covered partially with heavy gravel and rock. In many places that get snow and ice during the winter months, like where I used to live in Alaska, gravel's laid down to help provide traction. However, come summertime, many cities don't spend the money clearing this gravel, especially in smaller communities and back roads. Some of it gets removed through normal traffic, but often in less trafficked areas, you'll end up with spots that have less wheel contact that pull up these debris. And, as you might remember from my video on hydroplaning, I mean, you probably don't because nobody watched that video apparently, even though it had this awesome costume change in it. When a motorcycle's tire displaces water or gravel instead of pavement, it's a major problem when you've only got 2 contact points. Even if there was no rocks here, alternate direction traffic is usually separated by painted lines, raised markers, tape, rumble strips, epoxy, or thermoplastic, all of which generally have a reduced traction profile in wet conditions. Rain, road oils, gravel, and painted lines all should have been indicators to the rider that they needed to be very cautious with their maneuvers in this space and time. The rider's now looking to pass in the other lane, which is designated for opposite direction traffic, aka a 2-lane pass. Let's just touch briefly on the legality of this, because I know it can be confusing. As always, make sure you check your own local laws, because I'm going to make some broad statements that might only be accurate for some of you, or might change, who the fuck knows. It's largely illegal to overtake and pass another vehicle on a 2-lane road under the following conditions. There's no signs or markings stating that passing is prohibited, there's sufficient sight distance, and it can be done without interfering with other vehicles. Some places have more asterisks around being legal or safe. For example, you might be required to only pass 1 car at a time, or might still need to follow speed limits. But you know, here's my real suggestion. If you are that concerned that what you're doing might not be legal or the consequences of that, then you just probably shouldn't do it. Like with anything, quite at your comfort level. If I'm describing how to do a maneuver and you've got a little part of your brain saying, hey, don't do that, you should probably just listen to that part, because I'm sure it's going to keep you alive way longer than I will be.
Come on, you ape! You want to live forever?
The rider successfully overtakes 2 vehicles here on a somewhat straight section of the road. You actually see their bike wobble a bit as they begin their overtake, as the bike's traction profile changes rapidly, passing over the center lines. The rider doesn't decelerate much, so it seems like they've already made the decision to at least attempt to pass again, utilizing the speed they already built up in order to make this pass. But let's ask ourselves, is this a safe plan? To figure out when a 2-lane pass is safe, you gotta do some pretty advanced math. The primary question that you have to solve is, how much time is available for passing? But to get that requires answering a lot of other questions. Is the other lane clear? If so, how far? Is a car coming from the other direction? If so, how far is it? How fast is it going? Is there space to re-enter your lane? But wait, will you need to enter behind another vehicle? How much space do you need for that deceleration? And how much time do you need to pass the vehicle? Well, that depends on how fast you're going, and how quickly your bike can accelerate in your current gear and RPM range. Oh, and don't forget to account for road conditions that affect all that previous math. Oh, and of course, you're doing all this in your head, so that's mainly just guesstimating and approximates. If your head's starting to spin, that's really good, because it means I'm demonstrating that this 2-lane highway passing thing is a lot more complex and dangerous than a normal pass. So it probably shouldn't be one of those, this'll probably be fine, just fucking send it type of decisions. Several studies have shown that rural areas tend to have a higher percentage of head-on crashes than urban areas. A significant factor for this seems to be due to more passing attempts on 2-lane roads. As you can probably guess, head-on collisions are one of the most fatal types of crashes, only beaten out by right-angle crashes where people slam right into a driver. So the risk of these types of passes is very high if you don't calculate correctly when it's safe. Let's go to our Mind Palace and plug in some of that math I was talking about earlier to decide if this is a good time to pass. While we're plugging things, let's plug this channel by saying make sure you like and subscribe. We can only see maybe 200 to 300 feet if we're generous to the rider in the perspective from the lens. The rider is traveling at 61 miles per hour and will accelerate to 65. So that puts them traveling at 89 to 95 feet per second. This means the rider has about 3.5 seconds of visibility in front of them. This type of turn is colloquially called a blind corner, because being able to only see a few seconds in front of you makes you effectively blind to what is coming the other direction. We have to consider the possibility that another car could come from the end of our sight line at the speed limit or higher, so at least 40 miles per hour or 58.7 feet per second. And then, oh, holy shit, this is one of those math word problems that they used to make us do as kids, but never had any practical purpose in our lives. They always use trains. Why the hell did they use this as an example? This is pragmatic as shit. So if there was about 250 feet between the rider and another car in the opposite lane, there's about 1.6 seconds for the rider to detect the potential collision and avoid it in a way that doesn't cause a new problem, like going wide and out into this embankment. Add to all this that the car in front is assumed to be traveling around the speed limit of 40 miles per hour as well, which narrows the gap available to get back in and look, you see the issue here, right? This is probably the point of no return here, where the rider would need to commit to the pass regardless of if the car is coming the other way. And I get the feeling the rider knew that they were taking a chance here, which is why they were trying to expedite the pass time, but they also didn't feel comfortable accelerating to the 80 miles per hour of the previous pass. You can watch here, underneath the forks, to see that the front tire is able to handle the first painted line. But as the front hits the second line, I believe that's the moment the rear hits the first yellow line. And so the rear tire hitting the slick yellow line, combined with the already lowered traction conditions, is what I feel extremely confident saying is the cause of this low side. As we're sliding on the road here, it's also very fortunate that there is still no oncoming traffic, as the rider would have absolutely no way to prepare or defend themselves from being struck. It's entirely possible, and hell, let's just assume it's likely that the rider has navigated this exact road many times, maybe even completed passes on this exact stretch, and so knows that there's usually very little traffic here. We all have commutes or common roads to ride down that we might let lull us into a false sense of safety. But we should try to be objective at all times, to at least ensure that we don't end up being plastered on the grill of an 18-wheeler. Let's get the salient lessons to take away from this analysis. Be aware of road conditions and factor them into your maneuvers. There are just some opportunities and risks that you won't be able to pull off if it's not clear and dry. Be extra vigilant before and while attempting a 2-lane pass. And finally, Jesus fucking Christ, don't attempt a 2-lane pass on a goddamn blind turn.
Wow, we had a fun one right there, didn't we, gang? Since you made it this far, you must enjoy this, so make sure that you like, subscribe, and then figure out which one of your motorcycle friends is most likely to die from their lack of skill and send this video to them. It'll be fun when they get to this part and realize that you think they're shit at riding. Also, Daddy YouTube keeps telling me that you are all very bad notification boys and do not hit the goddamn bell for me. Look, I'm not like these other assholes who spam you with videos daily, so you should probably get notified of my shit before it's inevitably buried by the Ben Shapiro Owns the Libs Volume 35 or wherever the fuck you people watch. Another fun thing is that one of my previous accident analysis videos was demonetized because I had the audacity to use 14 seconds of a Sarah McLachlan song as a joke in the intro. So if you ever wonder why people ask you to support them on Patreon, it's because fair use is fucking dead. Long live our corporate overlords. Until next time, ride fast and take chances. Today, I just want to briefly discuss a book I recently read called Rise of the Warrior Cop, published in 2013 by Radley Balco. He's a contributor at the Washington Post, a prior investigative journalist at the Huffington Post, and a policy analyst at the Cato Institute, where he specialized in vice and civil liberties issues. The first thing I think is important to stress is that this book is not anti-cop. If it's anti-anything, it's the partisan American politics that cares less about protecting our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms and more about trying to score political points against the other side. The book is a history of policing through the ages, starting at the Rome's Praetorian Guard. Once it gets to the Americas in the 1960s, it slows down and talks about the race riots which led to creating the first SWAT teams. It talks a lot about the history of the drug war, which started with the Nixon administration and then ramped up through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It talks about how both Democrats and Republicans, including contemporary political figures like Joe Biden, utilize the drug war in order to further their own political goals. It also references another book written by a doctorate in leadership and human behavior, as well as former Seattle Chief of Police Norm Stamper, called Breaking Rank. Stamper saw firsthand the effects of these policies during his 34 years experience as a police officer, which eventually led him to resign from the force. This book does a great job of demonstrating how policies over the last 50 years have created a more violent, aggressive, and unaccountable police force that hasn't really made us safer. What the policies have done is that they've enabled and attracted people that are less disciplined, less sympathetic, and poorly trained in order for them to come play war on American streets. I would encourage everyone to read or listen to this book. I first got it on Audible because that's the only way I can make time to read books. Usually while riding my motorcycle, and I was so impressed with it that I picked up the hardback and started reading it again. I put affiliate links down in the description, but you don't have to spend any time or money to go watch this talk that the author did discussing what led him to write this book and some of the high-level points he brings up in a YouTube video I'll link here. I will warn you that during this talk, there is audio of some police raids, and there's some sounds of dogs in discomfort that I personally found upsetting. But it really emphasized one of the disturbing statistics that has come to light in recent years, and how dogs are being killed more and more in these raids with a completely unapologetic of shoot first and don't fucking ask us questions type of mentality.
Encourage you to imagine you're asleep in a back bedroom in the house. Count the number of seconds between the first announcement and the first gunshot.
Columbia Police, search warrant! Columbia Police, search warrant!
There's the first gunshot.
Go, get to the door! Police department, don't move! Police department, don't move! Police department, don't move! Police department, don't move!
So the police found a small quantity of pot in the bedroom, a personal use amount. As it turns out, pot had been decriminalized in the city of Columbia. So the way the drug laws work, they couldn't charge the guy for the pot. They did find a pipe near the pot. If the pipe had been anywhere else in the house, it would have been legal. But because it was found near the pot that they couldn't charge him for, they could charge him with possession of drug paraphernalia. So he got a $250 fine. That was the result of the raid.
And as much as I'm recommending a book here, I am always looking for book recommendations. So feel free to leave a comment for something that you think I might enjoy. I'm mainly interested in nonfiction, usually history or biographies. If you think this book is a crock of shit or some propaganda piece, then go ahead and recommend me something that you think gives me the opposite perspective. Anyway, thanks for watching. And say goodbye to this Buell because it ain't gonna be here next time.